Alright, so it's been a while since I've done a video, and even longer since I've done a video like with this classic sort of MacBook style webcam shot. And the lighting in here may not be very good, and the video actually may turn out to be totally, totally terrible. But what I want to do in this video is share my perspective, or a perspective, whatever that's worth, on some common stumbling blocks and ways in which I think we are sort of misled and mistaught and sort of really waste our energy and time when it comes to quote unquote practicing meditation or energy practices or these kinds of quote unquote esoteric things. And these are things that I've learned and I am learning, and I just want to share that with you. And ideally and very likely what I'm saying will be irrelevant and outdated 6 to 12 months in the future, if not sooner, because hey, we're all always learning. So the first thing I want to get out of the way is that what I notice, what I hear a lot, is how people are oftentimes using alternative things such as meditation or alternative health practices as just kind of another way of emphasizing their self-hatred. Now that might be kind of a tall claim because, oh no, meditation and all this spiritual stuff, this is about love and consciousness and compassion. Maybe that's a part of it, but maybe the translations that we are given are not really that adequate. So what am I basing that on? Well, basing it on from being in this industry for like 10 years, for doing a lot of consultations and working with a lot of people one-on-one, going to lots of seminars, going to lots of training programs, meeting teachers, meeting people, and just being in this world, and also being a student of the stuff, whatever you want to call it. And the second thing is that I kind of forgot actually what the second point was. The second point was actually that, for example, if we look at Chinese medicine, we look at the three treasures, we look at the five elements. Maybe you're familiar with it. So within five elements, there's five emotions, five sort of emotional states for each organ, or five spirits. And for the heart, people often translate that emotion as joy. But we have to realize that that's really inadequate, because we're taking a symbolic language. We're taking a Chinese character, which means a lot more than just joy, depending on the context, depending on a whole lot of different things. But then all we get when we read books is, oh, the spirit of the heart and the emotion of the heart, the Shen, is joy. But then we think, because we're like modern Western people, yay, I'm like blissed out. I'm so joyful. I'm so alive. Wow, life is so amazing. It's so good. But maybe that's just one little piece of it. And obviously, yeah, it feels good to be joyful. It feels good to be happy. But what we realize quickly is that everything in life is changing. And we run into this issue where we think we have to be this one thing all the time, but that's impossible. Because we're meant as human beings to experience perhaps a wide spectrum of things, not just be blissed out all the time, which is how people often interpret it, which perhaps maybe it has more to do with satisfaction, or doing things that you enjoy, things that put you in joy, things that inspire you, things that put you in spirit, things that allow you to be creative and expansive and warm and sort of expand towards other people. Maybe there's a lot more to it, which we can have hours of conversation about, but people pick one little thing and think, oh, that's the thing, so I have to be this thing, but I can't, because we're all humans and our mind is doing this all the time, and we have bad days, things don't go right, we get upset, we get mad, and we think, oh, I'm failing at this, I should be joyful, but I can't be. So how this relates to meditation is pretty much exactly the same thing, is that number one, meditation is usually poorly defined, meaning it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people from a lot of different parts of the world, from a lot of different historical eras and contexts and situations. So usually it's not really defined, as the first thing. And the second thing is, what people usually think it means is you just have to basically like empty your mind. And how this ties into the self-hatred thing that I mentioned earlier is that people we meditate and we think, okay, I just have to calm my mind. I just have to I just have to be quiet. But that doesn't work. That's usually met with a lot of failure and resistance. And then it's that same program that we talked about earlier where we think, oh, there's this one little thing that I have to be, this one little piece. So that's what I have to do, but I can't do it. I'm not doing it, so I'm failing, so I feel bad, so I'm not good. And I have to practice harder, I have to try harder, I have to beat myself harder, I have to do all this stuff, I have to spend all this money, I have to go to all these trainings, I gotta study with all these teachers, and I just can't do it. Well, maybe. But maybe it's kind of like saying, you know what? I'm just gonna be sexually aroused right now, and you're like, I'm gonna do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Maybe, but maybe there's a certain set of conditions, or oh, I'm gonna make myself hungry right now, even though maybe I just ate, or maybe I just woke up, or maybe who knows what. But we fail to miss that perhaps maybe there's a certain ecosystem or a certain set of conditions or a certain set of principles that allow perhaps the thing to fruit and arise naturally. So what happens is we focus on the leaf, but we miss the roots. We focus on the fruits, but we miss the actual thing which gives rise to it, and we don't nurture that. So that's a kind of a different conversation. And the other important thing to keep in mind is that if we're talking about, say, meditation or qigong or something like that, we have to realize that's not something we can actually do. Because a lot of reasons, but for one, there's no such thing as us. There's no such thing as the doer apart from the doing. So that construct is really kind of laughable. But then if we look at the word qigong, it just means energy skill. So it's kind of like saying, I'm going to be a concert pianist, but you never played piano before. You're not going to be. You're going to be terrible at it. You're going to hate it. You're going to probably feel crazy. But when we approach these things, we realize, oh, I'm a beginner. It's just a skill set. These things have to happen. Maybe I have a talent for it. Maybe I don't. Maybe I really like it. Maybe I don't. Because this is the other thing, is sometimes people hate it, but they do it because, oh, it's good for me. It's going to make me a better person, which is also kind of the self-hatred thing, which is the opposite of nurturing the heart, because the heart is perhaps about enjoyment or satisfaction or being in joy or being inspired. But if we're doing things that don't do that, then how are we actually going to nurture that faculty? We're not. It's not going to happen. It's impossible, because the set of principles, the conditions, the context to perhaps make it happen, it's not there. But again, it's not something we do. Kind of like if we're going to grow a garden, we don't grow the plants. We don't really do shit. We just maybe take some seeds and maybe put them in the ground and maybe mess things around a little bit. But pretty much everything is not done by us. And that's how most things in life work. If we think about what is the thing that we all really like as human beings, what are the experiences that we all crave and we love? Typically, they're the ones where we feel the least amount of self-consciousness, where we feel like, wow, that was just magical. It all just happened. I didn't have to do anything. I was there, and then this thing happened, and all this stuff happened. It was amazing. But then if you talk about people who are like, oh, well, I had to show up, and then I had to do this, and then I had to do that, and then I had to do this, and then I had to go here, and I had to go there. Usually that's an opposite kind of experience where we're like, feeling drained and we're not into it and we're frustrated by it, we don't like it. So that perhaps can illustrate some of the ideas, some of the contexts that we're talking about here. And these are just common things where we all sort of get stuck. So obviously there are things that can make it easier, but it's not something we can force, because there's nothing that we can do. Because if we're trying to still water by force, it's not gonna happen. But it's just understanding the nature of things and realizing that perhaps rather than thinking the natural state of a human being is to just sit around and be like mindless and thoughtless all the time, perhaps it's about finding the stillness within the movement, because the nature of everything is always moving. Because perhaps if we reached a point where we realize, man, this thing is just turning all the time, we realize, oh, things are just moving all the time, but it's not something we are doing. It's perhaps something that maybe we can observe and step back from and perhaps treat more like a child with compassion and kindness and gentleness and a little bit of objectivity and just, well, that's that. And because that maybe is closer to the nature of the thing in which we're trying to interface with, if that makes sense. So hopefully this was helpful. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was boring. Maybe it was offensive. Maybe the idea that people would hate themselves is just so hard to believe. The idea that anyone who's spiritual would have these negative programs running, oh, it's just impossible. No, but it's just kind of like, do we want to be religious or do we want to be human beings? Do we want to be maybe authentically ourselves, or do we want to beat ourselves to fulfill some kind of ideal that maybe has nothing to do with our joy or our sense of personal power or inspiration or creativity or expression or enjoyment, whatever you want to call it? So yeah, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully the quality turns out pretty good, and I'll talk to you soon.